Hello, hello, hello. Happy Sunday. It's your girl, Mel, your favorite astrologer of Divine Feminine Works. And as always, I hope that this live or replay finds you well and in excellent spirits. If you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. This channel is everything tarot, astrology, spirituality, and manifestation. So if those are the things you like, if those are the things you love, if those are the things you want to learn more about, don't forget to hit that subscribe button as well as that notification bell so you'll always be notified when I come out with new content. And speaking of content, head over to Instagram and hit that follow button. I've got loads of excellent daily content. Plus, I go live every Thursday night at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time for live tower readings by sign. All right, so head over there, hit that follow so you don't miss any of that great stuff. All right, so happy Sunday. Happy Memorial Day if you're here in the United States. Well, Memorial Day is tomorrow, so happy Memorial Day weekend. Hopefully you are out doing something really fun, having a good time. But if you are here rocking with me, you know, as always, I appreciate you so much. You could be doing a million other things, but if you're here with me, I love it. Thank you. So let's talk about this coming week. This is the week of May 30th to June 4th. All right. So what's interesting about this week is that there isn't much going on in terms of the astrology. So typically every week we've got a couple of aspects. And aspects are really just the planets speaking to each other. It's the planets in relation to each other and sort of the relationships they form based on the angles that they make to each other. So you'll usually have a couple of squares, maybe some sextiles. You usually have the planets doing some stuff during the week, although this week is a little more quiet. There aren't really any direct aspects, all right? But what is going on this week is pretty significant, right? Because we've got a new moon, which is happening tomorrow on the 30th. And then we have Mercury finally going direct after having been retrograde for 3 weeks. And we have another planet going retrograde, namely Saturn, okay? And so, like I said, this week, there isn't too much going on, but what's going on is significant, all right? So before we get into this week, I want to talk about today specifically, because today we have a pretty powerful aspect that we're going to see play out, particularly with the new moon tomorrow. So if you didn't get a chance to listen to my weekly astro forecast from last week, and I suggest you do, because some of what's going on last week is still going to be carrying on into this week, all right? But if you didn't get a chance to catch it, we've got Mars conjunct Jupiter today, which is a very powerful transit. Okay, so Mars just entered its home sign of Aries last week. Jupiter recently entered Mars within the last 2 weeks. And when you put Mars and Jupiter together, you get a lot of energy. You get a lot of physical energy. You get a lot of combative energy. You get a lot of conflict, but you also get a lot of confidence. But whatever it is, anything having to do with Jupiter is always a lot. It expands, okay? And so unfortunately, in the wake of what happened last Tuesday in Texas, and that was the day that Mars actually entered its home sign, and Mars rules violence. And we all know how that sort of turned out, you know, and we're still sort of trying to deal with that and make sense of that in light of everything that's going on. With Mars conjunct Jupiter, this is sort of that same energy, but sort of expanded. Okay, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see some more violence that really escalates. That's sort of the negative side of this transit. You know, it can bring a lot of violence. It can bring a lot of, things getting blown out of proportion, but it can also bring a lot of self-confidence. It can bring a lot of fortune and abundance if you're willing to take some risks. Okay. And so it's a really interesting aspect. Again, very powerful. But leading into the new moon tomorrow is actually going to play a major role. And I'll get to that in a second. But I just wanted to remind you all that today is one of those days where you're going to definitely want to watch what you say. You're definitely going to want to be mindful of conflict, because any little conflict is like, it can be like pouring gasoline on an existing fire. Like things could really heat up and really be blown out of proportion today. So definitely keep that in mind. All right. What's going on? What's going on, everybody? Hello, hello, hello. So glad to see you guys here. Hello, PJ. As always, thank you for joining. Lovely to see you guys here with me on this beautiful Sunday. Hopefully it's beautiful where you guys are. Here in Florida, it's sunny, it's hot, it's everything you would want it to be. All right. So without further ado, let's get into the week. All right. So this week on Monday, we have that new moon in Gemini, powerful new moon that's going to be aided by that Mars and Jupiter conjunction happening today. Then on Wednesday, we have the moon moving into Cancer. Thereafter on Friday, we have Mercury finally going direct in the sign of Taurus. And then on Saturday, we have, like I mentioned before, Saturn going retrograde in Aquarius. All right. So like I said, not a lot going on, but what is going on is pretty significant. All right. And as always, time to talk about the Astrology Basics cheat sheet, which I do every single forecast. If you're new to astrology, or even if you've started studying astrology and just need a refresher, I've created this thing called the Astrology Basics cheat sheet, which essentially gives you everything you need to know to start learning astrology and specifically starting to read your natal chart. All right. Your natal chart is the blueprint to your life. And being able to read it is really important. And so this cheat sheet basically goes over the planets, the houses, the signs, and the aspects. Again, it's everything that you need to know to get started. It's the quick and dirty on everything. So you'll have a pretty basic idea of the basics of your natal chart, right? You know, reading your natal chart can be like going down a rabbit hole. There's so much that you can glean from it. There's so much you can learn from it. And so this just scratches the surface, but it's definitely a great place to start. So if you're interested, the Astrology Basics cheat sheet is going to be linked in the description box below. It's completely free. All you have to do is provide your email address and you can download the cheat sheet and get studying. All right. So without further ado, let's get into the week. So we start with Monday. And like I said, Monday is sort of the star day of the week because we have the new moon going down in the sign of Gemini, specifically 9 degrees Gemini, which you will see towards the left-hand side of your screen. Now, what's interesting is that this new moon doesn't make any direct aspects, meaning that the sun and the moon aren't necessarily in direct relation to any other planets at this time. But there are some other aspects that have either passed or are coming up that still sort of give this new moon some flavor. All right. So the first one, like I mentioned, is Mars conjunct Jupiter, which is going down today. This could be a lot of overconfidence. This could be over exuberance. This could be a little too much cockiness, a little too much arrogance, thinking too much of yourself. It can lend itself to like over promising and under delivering. Again, it could also mean that conflict, if it ensues, is definitely going to be blown out of proportion. So again, like I said before, you're going to want to be mindful of how you interact with people, what you say, how you say it, you know, all of that good stuff. But what I love about this aspect, particularly as it relates to the new moon, is that fortune favors the bold. Okay. So new moons are really all about new beginnings, right? It's the beginning of the lunar cycle, and it's when we plant new seeds and set new intentions, right? Now, Mars being in its home sign of Aries is all about taking action, especially action directed towards our goals and our desires, right? And Jupiter is just going to expand whatever it is that we do. So really with this new moon, if you take just even the slightest bit of action, I feel like that is going to be amplified by the presence of Jupiter. So even if, let's say, for instance, you're trying to start a business, right? And let's say you decide tomorrow, let me file the paperwork. Let me put my LLC together. Let me put my corporation together, file that paperwork. I feel like just that action is going to build momentum. And I feel like in the next coming weeks or even the next coming months, you're going to see a lot more activity in your business, and you may even see more money coming in or more abundance or more opportunities. Because again, fortune favors the bold with this particular aspect. All right. Then the other aspect that we have going on is Mercury retrograde square Saturn. Okay. And so the flavor of this new moon, while it is bold and dynamic, right, with Mars and Jupiter conjunct in Aries, it is going to be a little challenging, particularly with Mercury square Saturn. The new moon is in the sign of Gemini. Gemini is ruled by Mercury. Mercury is still retrograde tomorrow. So things from the past may be coming up. And with Saturn ruling karma, expect, if you believe in karma, of course, expect some karma to come back around, perhaps. But really, Mercury square Saturn frustrates communication. It puts obstacles in the way of effective communication. So when it comes to expressing yourself, when it comes to expressing ideas, when it comes to just communicating and getting your point across, you're going to find it a little more difficult to do so. Even if you're not communicating with someone, even if you're just writing things down, scripting, making plans, you're going to find it hard or a little challenging to get, your plans exactly as you want them to be, or for things to make sense in your mind. Okay. So it's really important that you be persistent, particularly if you're trying to start something new, if you're trying, like I said, to plan some things. Be persistent, because this transit won't last long. But you may find that you get discouraged, right? Because if let's say you're trying to put a financial plan together and things just aren't making sense. You're like, this is the perfect time for me to do so, particularly if this new moon is in like your second house or your eighth house. It's great for financial planning, right? So if you find that it's very difficult to do that, don't just throw it away and be like, oh, maybe I'll just do this later, or maybe I'll get to it another time. Like, really be persistent and diligent with it, because you will be able to overcome those obstacles. But if you're not willing to put in the work, it really doesn't even make sense to begin. All right. So this could also be like a monkey wrench in your plans. You may have like the best set plans, and something just comes in and just throws a monkey wrench in them. So again, it's going to be really important when setting those intentions, when planting those seeds, that you be very persistent and diligent. All right. Because it's going to be a little challenging. And then the last aspect that is affecting this new moon is going to be Venus square Pluto. Okay. So Venus square Pluto is permanent changes, or changes that are very dramatic when it comes to love, when it comes to money. For some, depending on where this is going down in your chart, this could be affecting your looks. So something about your looks may change drastically. This could be relationships ending, or relationships transforming into something completely different, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? But although squares, and if you download the Astrology Basics cheat sheet, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Squares denote tension and frustration. So if you're looking to change your relationship with this new moon, right? Because Gemini is all about relationships. New moon is all about new beginnings. So again, depending on where it's going down in your chart, some of you may want to have a change in your relationship. And I feel like Venus square Pluto can really help you with that. However, it's not going to be this happy-go-lucky, really lovey-dovey kind of change. It's going to be a change that comes with, or is a result of, some sort of frustration, some sort of tension, or some sort of conflict. So if you find that you are having issues when it comes to your relationship, when it comes to money, even with this new moon, particularly if you're trying to manifest anything new on those fronts, know that if something is sort of going sour, it's only going to help you in the long run. Okay. So sometimes you have to break things down to build them back up better. And Venus square Pluto is definitely one of those transits. So keep that in mind, especially if you're trying to manifest a new relationship, or taking a relationship to a new level, if you're trying to get more money, if you're trying to get funding, anything like that, even with creative projects, since Venus covers, or I should say governs, creativity. So things such as art, fashion, beauty, all of those things. So if you're trying to manifest anything along those lines, and you find that, something ends, right? Let's say you're trying to, you want to maybe monetize a hobby that you have, or some creative endeavor you want to pursue, right? Or you're interested in making money like a side hustle. And then, you find that you get laid off from your job. I mean, that's a very extreme example, but it's possible under this transit. So you find that happens. That's really just making space for you to have this new creative endeavor. I know it may feel really shitty, but that's sort of how the universe works sometimes. So sometimes you get a really great gift in a really disgusting package. And that may be the essence of Venus square Pluto for you, particularly with this new moon. All right. So in talking about this new moon more generally, like I said before, it's happening at the 9th degree of Gemini tomorrow. I'm not sure of the specific time, but definitely tomorrow on May 30th. And the 9th degree is the degree of Sagittarius, right? Sagittarius is all about things at a distance, things being grand. It's sort of the big picture of life, right? So the effects of this new moon could be very far reaching. Okay. So again, the astrology actually backs this up with Mars conjunct Jupiter. Jupiter is actually the ruling planet of Sagittarius. So again, it's almost like if you take the littlest action, or if you just take that first step, if you take a leap of faith, take that first step, I feel like the effects can be really far reaching and much bigger than you anticipate. But it's going to require you to be courageous. It's going to require you to step out on faith. It's going to require you to sort of step out of your comfort zone and see the big picture of what you're trying to accomplish. Okay. Which is great. Whenever we're talking about the moon, we also talk about emotions. Okay. So it may be a very emotional time as well. I wouldn't say not in the same way as the full moon, because the full moon tends to bring out our emotions much more. But I feel like because this is happening at the 9th degree of Gemini, and that's the Sagittarius degree, I feel like our emotions can feel larger than life as well, particularly emotions like optimism, happiness, all of those kind of feel good emotions. Like I feel like a lot of us are going to be feeling that very prominently. And again, that speaks to Mars conjunct Jupiter. And that's the perfect way to feel at a new moon, right? Because if you're setting intentions, you don't want to set intentions feeling anxious, feeling small or limited or anything like that. If you're already feeling good, if you're already feeling exuberant, if you're already feeling lucky and optimistic, which is characteristic of this Mars conjunct Jupiter transit, then it's so much easier to manifest from that place, right? It's so much easier to manifest when you're feeling good. So if you happen to be feeling good, if you're in that space already, like this is the perfect time for you to set some new intentions and plant new seeds, all right? Now, Gemini in and of itself is a very intellectual sign. The thing with this new moon is that although we've got Mars conjunct Jupiter, which I feel like I'm talking about ad nauseum, but it really plays a big role in this new moon. As much as Mars conjunct Jupiter is all about action, Gemini is more about the planning, right? The research before that action. So even though you want to take a step out on faith and you want to take that first step towards, this grand idea or this grand goal, you're going to need to do some research and planning first. Don't just jump without sort of knowing where you're going or what you're doing. And Gemini, being that this new moon is in Gemini, that's really going to be a big theme. So it's not the case, or it's not necessarily the case, that you're just going to be taking action tomorrow, right? Oh, let me go down to the office and file my LLC. Or let me go talk to this guy that I've really been interested in. Maybe tomorrow is about the planning, right? The planning. You're in this feel-good optimism, optimistic, happy-go-lucky state. It's really great to sort of put pen to paper or even just sit and meditate on it for a while and just think of a master plan. Think of what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, who you're going to talk to. That's the essence of Gemini energy. And speaking of talking to, Gemini rules communication. So you may find that before you take that action, you're talking to people who can help you. You're communicating with people about the particular skills that you may need, or, the facts that you may need to know in order to pursue this goal. Okay. It's also about being curious, okay? So if you find that you have this goal and you don't necessarily know how to approach it or how to go about it, I think one of the best courses of action is to just allow yourself to entertain your own curiosity. Whatever you're thinking, whatever you're sort of exposed to with respect to whatever you're trying to manifest, or even if it has to do with a person or a particular topic, like allow yourself to be curious and allow yourself to entertain that curiosity, because I feel like it can ultimately lead you toward your goal, towards your manifestation. Okay. So again, this is a very interesting new moon. I feel like it's definitely going to be something that is a little challenging, like I said before, because of some of the aspects, but it really gives us the opportunity to set things in motion. Again, that Mars conjunct Jupiter aspect is going to be very pivotal with this new moon, because it's going to give us a lot of that firepower to get things done. And even if you're not getting things done, like taking action per se, this really could be a time where you're thinking of a master plan and communicating with the people that can ultimately help you get to where you want to go and get the things that you want. All right. So again, powerful, powerful, powerful new moon. Okay. All right. So Next up on Wednesday, we have the moon moving into Cancer. Okay, so the moon is going to be moving into its home sign of Cancer, which is going to make us all feel a little moody, a little sensitive. You may find that your psychic abilities, your telepathy, things like that really come online, and your intuition is definitely going to be lit. Okay, so since we have the new moon on Monday, all of the moon's transits this week are going to be in the waxing crescent phase. So it's all about that step right after that new beginning, okay? So this is going to be a week where perhaps you feel very motivated, where you feel very driven, where you feel like purposeful and intentional about the things that you want and the places that you want to go, okay? So a lot of momentum can be achieved this week if you use that energy to your advantage, all right? But first, with the moon in Cancer, this isn't going to be about doing anything. It's not even going to be about creating a master plan. It's really about tapping into your emotions. How do you feel about what it is that you want? What is your intuition telling you about what it is that you want? How does whatever you want or whatever you want to achieve, how does it relate to your basic emotional needs? How do you think you're going to feel when you have it? I feel like the moon in Cancer is really going to ask these questions of us and allow us to explore those emotions that come with it, okay? The moon in Cancer is all about healing potential as well. So for some of us, depending on what it is that we're trying to manifest, whatever plans we're trying to bring to fruition, perhaps this is a time where we allow ourselves to be healed, where we address our basic emotional needs and how that plays into what we want, okay? So we may be talking to other people for healing, or we may just be doing healing on ourselves in order to get into that version of us that can really have the things that we want, okay? But a lot can be done under this waxing crescent moon in Cancer, okay? Cancer is also a little protective, right? So this may be the time where you sort of shield and nurture your intention. This isn't a time where you're sort of outwardly doing something or trying to solidify things into, your existence. I feel like this is just giving yourself and your intentions the love and emotional support that it needs to grow, okay? All right, so that's Wednesday. Next up on Friday, we have Mercury going direct in Taurus, and we have the moon in Leo. All right. So at the sort of the bottom left of your screen, you'll see this little purple guy at 26 degrees Taurus. That is Mercury. And then at the very bottom of the screen, you'll see the moon at 20. Well, that's still in Cancer, but that same day later on, the moon is going to transit into Leo. All right. So Mercury has been began retrograde in Gemini, then retrograded back into Taurus, and it started its retrograde journey back on the 10th of May, right? And finally, on Friday, it's going to go direct in the sign of Taurus, okay? So Mercury in Taurus is all about down-to-earth thinking. It's about common sense. It's about plans and communication geared toward things of value and building things of value, okay? This could also be communication about physical, tangible things, right? Whether it's products, whether it's things that we can touch, things that we can feel, things that we can buy, right? This is also about sort of thoughts that can be a little conservative and a little narrow-minded, because Taurus is really about being in your comfort zone. Taurus doesn't like to sort of rock the boat. Taurus likes to go with everything that's tried and true. And so when Mercury is in Taurus, our thoughts tend to veer towards the things that we already know and are comfortable with. It's not the time where we really venture out of our comfort zone. We're not really interested in learning anything new or anything novel. We like to stick to what we know, okay? And so Mercury is really not going to spend much time in Taurus, because now that it's going direct, it's going to head back into its home sign of Gemini within the next week or two. Okay, so it's not going to spend too much time in Taurus, but during that time, I wouldn't be surprised if we encounter a lot more stubborn thinking, a lot of narrow-mindedness, a lot of more conservative sort of thinking. And by conservative, I don't mean like the Conservative Party. I just mean thinking that's less risky. Okay, it's less liberal. It's less like future focused. It's more about the here and now, what makes sense and what we typically know. Okay. It's also about being comfortable with routine because Taurus is all about routine. It's about rote work. Think about just the sign of Taurus in general, the bull. I always, whenever I think of Taurus energy, I think of, in a field or in a farm where they have that bull or that ox and it has that wooden thing on it and it's just like plowing the soil. Like that is the essence of Taurus energy. And so with Mercury in Taurus, it's really about our daily routine, thinking about our daily routine, communication geared toward our daily routine. So Mercury direct in Taurus is going to be a little mundane. It's going to be quote unquote like normal, sort of return to our regularly scheduled programming, right? Before Mercury retrograde sort of was wreaking havoc all over our lives and scaring us to death, right? So again, with Mercury going direct, it's sort of business as usual. And speaking of business, business as usual can resume because Mercury, not only does it rule communication, but it also rules like our transactions. And if we're talking about Taurus, we're talking about like tangible things. So transactions, business transactions, sales, negotiations, all of those things are going to sort of return to normal at this time. So if you listen to my May monthly that I did last month, you'll know that I said when Mercury is retrograde, you kind of don't want to sign contracts. You don't want to sign on the dotted line because you're probably going to have to review it again later on. But now that Mercury is direct, you can feel free to transact business, sign contracts. Again, it's back to our regularly scheduled program. All right. And then that same day, the moon is going to transit into the sign of Leo. And when the moon is in Leo, it's all about our inner child. It's all about following our heart. It's all about being courageous, being creative and standing out. And again, because the moon is going to be in the waxing crescent phase, this is sort of giving momentum to our desires, giving momentum to our intentions and our manifestations. Okay. And so this is going to get us to listen to our inner child when it comes to what it is that we want to achieve. It's also going to be about following our heart and doing what we really love to do. For some, if whatever you're trying to manifest has to do, let me not say has to do, but if you're trying to manifest something, right, it's sort of the time to put your own stamp on it because Leo stands apart from the crowd. It's the king of the jungle. Leo is like the star of the show. Okay. And so this is going to allow you to put your own personal stamp on whatever it is that you're doing. For some, this is a great time to just express yourself, period. So depending on where this new moon is going down in your chart, particularly if it's going down in your 5th house, this is going to be creative endeavors, expressing yourself, even expressing yourself through children, like conceiving children or something like that. Okay. But regardless, you're going to want to follow your heart. You're going to want to be courageous and you're going to want to, try not to let pride get in the way because that's one of the things that Leo tends to be really good at, right? Pride can be good to a certain extent, but oftentimes if you are too prideful, it really prevents you from truly expressing yourself and letting people know how you feel, okay? So that may be a thing for some people, so you may want to be mindful of that. Also, when the moon is in Leo, this is all about romance, okay? So it may be time for you to sort of put the rose-colored glasses on for a couple of days and see the good in life, see the good in people. I feel like that feel-good energy, again, sort of picking up from Mars conjunct Jupiter that's happening today, that feel-good energy is just going to add fuel to whatever you're trying to manifest. So I'd say overwhelmingly this week, you're going to want to at least try to remain in a space of feeling good and optimistic. I don't think that's going to be too hard. But again, with everything that's going on, if you listen to the news a lot, that can be a bit challenging. But I feel like the key this week to really taking advantage of this new moon is feeling good, feeling optimistic, feeling hopeful. I think that is what's going to be the gasoline that ignites your desires and your manifestations. All right. And finally, we get to Saturday. And on Saturday, we have Saturn going retrograde in the sign of Aquarius. You will see that towards the bottom right of your screen. It's the maroon H looking thing. And it's at 25 degrees Aquarius. And again, it is going retrograde. All right. So Saturn retrograde is quite different from Mercury retrograde. Mercury is a personal planet, right? It's closest to the sun and it's very close to Earth. So anything having to do with Mercury, we always feel on a very personal level. That's why Mercury rules interpersonal communication, one-on-one communication, right? Saturn is quite far removed from the sun. It's also quite far removed from us. It's not a personal planet. It's actually called an interpersonal planet, along with Jupiter. So while it's not a personal planet, it's also not an outer planet either. So in terms of feeling its energy, we feel Saturn more when we deal with people. It's almost like a relational planet. And we also see it play out on the grand stage of society. So it's not like Mercury that's really going to be pounding down on you, right? Saturn retrograde is something that you're still going to feel, but it's definitely not going to be as like potent as a Mercury retrograde, for instance. Okay. So Saturn retrograde is all about karma. Saturn is a very difficult planet. It's actually one of the malefic planets. And the malefic planets are planets that really exude negative energy. The other malefic planet is Mars, okay? But Saturn is all about teaching us life lessons. It's all about obstacles, challenges, but all of these things are really to build character. So Saturn breaks you down to build you back up better, okay? And so when Saturn is direct, we still feel obstacles, we still experience challenges, but we experience it outwardly, right? Like in our society, in our relationships. When Saturn is retrograde, that obstacle and challenge filled energy is actually turned inward. Okay. So sometimes we may be getting in our own way when it comes to Saturn retrograde. But by and large, Saturn retrograde is that energy of unfinished business. So if there have been certain lessons that you didn't learn the first time around, Saturn retrograde is going to make you repeat them, okay, until you learn them so you can graduate on to the next level, okay? Could also be karma. You can also be experiencing karma, either good or bad, right? If you believe in that. So it's like we turn a critical eye inward, okay? And we see where we've been standing in our own way, where we've been challenging ourselves, where we haven't been learning the lessons that we need to learn, okay? And in Aquarius is all about futuristic energy. It's about forward-looking energy, okay? So it's almost like Saturn retrograde is going to turn a critical eye inward and see where we are lacking, what lessons we need in order to be able to move on to the future. And again, if you haven't learned those lessons the first time, you're going to repeat them. So let me give you a perfect example. Perhaps since Saturn is going retrograde in Aquarius, let's say you are a Capricorn rising, right? Because if you're a Capricorn rising, Aquarius is going to be your second house. The second house covers things like self-esteem, self-worth, and things that we value. So if you've been having issues with your self-esteem, your self-worth, how you value yourself, how you allow others to value you and play a part in how you value yourself, those lessons are going to come back around during Saturn retrograde to get you to see those lessons and really learn them this time around. So Saturn retrograde can sometimes be a bit jarring and triggering because it's making us go through things that maybe we ignored in the past, things that were difficult that we just decided not to engage in. Saturn is really going to put you through the school of hard knocks. And the whole point of the Saturn retrograde is, again, so you can learn these lessons so you can move forward and be better, right? And the one thing I love about Saturn, any sort of Saturn transit, even when it's retrograde, any sort of Saturn action, it's harsh, right? It's all about obstacles. But if you pass the tests that Saturn provides you with, Saturn always leaves you with a really nice gift. And something that's very much what you need, something that feels really good, okay? So perfect example, going back to what I was saying before. If self-worth and self-esteem are an issue for you and Saturn retrograde is making you revisit those lessons, right? And let's say you learn it this time. Let's say you set the right boundaries. Maybe you put yourself first, whatever you need to do to increase your self-worth, right? If you successfully do that, by the time Saturn goes direct in a couple of months, perhaps now you're attracting a new relationship, right? A new relationship that reflects this new you that has a lot more self-worth and self-esteem, right? And that's a pretty nice gift, if I say so myself. So yeah, Saturn never leaves you without a gift. Although the lessons and the tests can be challenging, the reward is definitely worth it. All right. And so we're definitely going to experience that for the next couple of months. And again, it's preparing us to be better in the future looking. For some of us, it's about going over the structures that we have in our lives, right? Perhaps some of the structures are on faulty foundation. Perhaps there are certain things that we need in order to make those structures better. Saturn retrograde is going to address those things, put us through those lessons so we can ultimately become better. All right. All right, friends. So really, that is what's going on this week. Like I said, it's definitely not much going on, but what's going on is pretty significant. All right. And if you want to know more about what this week has in store for you in particular, definitely sign up for my newsletter, because every week I do the weekly guide, which breaks down every single rising sign and what you can expect for the week. So it's basically the weekly horoscopes. So if you haven't signed up for my newsletter, link is in the description box below. So don't forget to do that. All right. So again, I wish you guys a great week. Happy new moon in Gemini. I know that you guys could be doing anything, especially if you're here in the US. You could be doing something fun and exciting during this Memorial Day weekend. But the fact that you are rocking with me means so much to me. And from the bottom of my heart, I love you. All right. So again, have a great week, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Oh. I always do that. I'm like, oh, yeah, bye. And I'm like, yeah, I can't find the button. But yes, this time. All right. Have a great week. See you next time.